Hi everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. This is MEFA's webinar on the CSS Profile, one of the financial aid applications for students applying to college. My name is Meredith Barnhart. I am our Director of Communications. I'll be going through the webinar slides today. This should last just under an hour. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them into the questions section in your GoToWebinar panel, and I'll cover all those questions at the end. For those who aren't familiar with MEFA, we're the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. We're presenting today's webinar. We're a not-for-profit state authority created in 1982. We're located right in downtown Boston, and our sole purpose is just to help families like yours plan and save and pay for college. We have a lot of free resources available, most of them online, so would definitely encourage you to take advantage of them. Our website has a lot of tools, articles, great links that can help you through the college admissions and financial aid process. We're all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, so I invite you to follow us and like us. We have emails. If you're not on our email list, I'd encourage you to sign up. We only email folks about once every 2 to 4 weeks, but it's going to have some helpful information as you go through college planning with your son or daughter. And then we do have seminars in the community and webinars like this webinar today. If you go to our events page, which is just mefa.org/events, you'll find all the details on those. And then finally, MEFA Pathway is our free college planning tool for high school students, and we're opening up a middle school portal soon. Just allows students to plan for college with an application manager, scholarship search, different resources that can help them also plan for career, including information about different careers that might match their skills and interests. So let's dive right into the CSS Profile. The CSS Profile is administered by the College Board. It's an online financial aid application, and it's required by almost 250 colleges and universities and scholarship programs across the country. If you're not sure if a college requires the profile, all you have to do is check the college or university's financial aid website. There's also a listing on the profile website that I'll show you that lists all the colleges and universities that actually require the profile. One thing to note, if you need to fill out the profile for a college or a university, you still need to complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA is required by every college in the country. So you do need to do the FAFSA. You need to list on the FAFSA every college and university to which you're applying. But then in addition, these 250 institutions also require the CSS profile. If you need to do the FAFSA and haven't done it yet, we did a webinar a few days ago that you can find right on our events page with information about submitting the FAFSA. The profile is used by the schools that require it to award non-federal financial aid funds, meaning their own grants and scholarships. The FAFSA data is used to award all the federal financial aid that's out there. So every college and university is in charge of administering or gifting the federal financial aid to students. If a college has its own financial aid funds, as many of them do, some of them opt to use this CSS profile, and they take the information on that profile in order to determine who's eligible for their own financial aid funds. Just like the FAFSA, the CSS profile becomes available October 1st every year. It's actually available right now. So if you go on, you could actually complete it this weekend before October 1st. And it is available for both domestic and international students. Institutions use the profile mainly because it collects more detailed information than the FAFSA. Remember, all these schools that are getting your profile are also getting your FAFSA data, but the profile is going to ask more detailed questions. And so colleges and universities that use it feel like they are more fairly administering their financial aid funds because they're getting more details from every family on the family's finances and who lives in the household. It also allows schools to ask customized questions. So if a school wants to know something about every applicant related to the family's finances or household size, they can actually add in questions. And you'll see those questions, and you'll see next to the question who asked it. So if a certain school asked a certain question, you'll know which school asked the question. And again, those are only for those extra customized questions. The profile also allows you to provide special circumstances, which I'll talk a bit more about, but you can actually type in a note to the financial aid offices that are reviewing your details. So this is where you'll begin. This is the CSS Profile homepage. It's simply cssprofile.org, easy to remember. And let's look at all these arrows here, starting with those on the left-hand side. You'll want to click the yellow button that you see in the middle of the screen that says Apply for Fall 2019, Spring 2020. Remember, you're applying for financial aid for next academic year, so you'll fill out the financial aid applications notating that academic year. That's true with the FAFSA as well. So you're looking for 2019, 2020. Under the picture of those two women, you can see it says check participating schools and scholarships. That's where you can see the full list of colleges and universities that require the profile. That's about 99% accurate. There might be a school that just signed up for the profile and isn't on that list. They do have to opt to be included on that list, but I can't imagine why a school wouldn't want to be on that list that's linked to from the homepage. So you can look at that list right on the CSS Profile site to see which colleges and universities require it. There is an overview webinar that actually the CSS Profile put together. It's going to have a lot of the same information that this webinar has today, but if you want to cover all your bases or learn the information again, you can click on that Learn How to Apply button in the middle and follow along with the CSS Profile webinar. The student guide, you'll see later on in this webinar. The link to it is right there on the right-hand side. It's just a one-page PDF, basic information about the profile. Pretty much all that information is going to be covered in this webinar today, but it's just one more resource you can review before you start. And then you can see at the top where it says More Info, there are tabs: Getting Started, Fee Waivers, Divorced or Separated Parents, and International Applicants. If you want more information about any of those topics, you can click on that tab. You can see below there are the same links to those topics. If you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see these resources. And again, this is just more information for certain populations. So if you have a non-custodial parent, and I'll talk all about parents in the profile, that parent may need to submit their own profile. So you can learn more about that. You might have to create an account for parent use. You can learn about that. If you're not able to submit non-custodial parent information, there's a waiver request, and there are also fee waivers. And again, I'll go through all of those in the webinar today. Here's just a screenshot of those first few schools on the participating institutions and programs list. So you can see the institution name, where it's located, if the profile is used for domestic students, if it's used for international students, if it does require a profile from a non-custodial parent, and again, we'll talk about that. A lot of schools do, but not all. And then if the school uses iDoc, which is basically just a scanning service for your taxes, and we'll introduce that as well. So with the application process, you'll go to that cssprofile.org homepage, and you have two options. You can sign in using the Student's College Board account from the SATs or AP tests. So likely most of your students do have a College Board account if they took the SAT at any point or if they've taken an AP test. So you can use your student's account to log in. If you don't want to do that or don't have your student's account readily available, you can, as the parent, create your own account to complete and submit the profile. Doesn't matter whose account you use. For the parent, if you're creating your own account, you're actually going to create a new student account and use your information. And that's just how the profile is set up. So those are their instructions. You'll create a new student account, but you're actually going to put in your information because this is really, it's a parent account. They just don't have that as an option. They only have student accounts. So you'll basically create a new student account with your information if you want to log in under your own information. As you go through the CSS profile, the left-hand sidebar will show the different sections that you need to complete, and they're added when they become required based on the information that you're entering into the profile. You are permitted to jump ahead to different sections, and you can click at the bottom. You'll see the Save and Continue button to move on to each section. Each section will show a check once you've completed it, so you'll know that, okay, I'm all set with this section. I can move on to the next section. And you do not have to do the profile all in one sitting. You can start it, answer a few questions, come back to it. So definitely know you don't have to set aside an entire hour to complete the application. You can start it. You could start it today after the webinar and then finish it later on. And when you do log back in, you'll put your information in, and then you'll be directed right to the first section that you need to complete. Those answers will be automatically saved. You'll click Save and Continue to move on to each section, but as you're going, your answers are saved. Just some general tips about the profile. If you want to exit, so let's say you start the profile and then you need to do something else, you'll click that Save and Continue button that I mentioned, and then you'll close your browser, and then you'll be good to log in the next time you have time to complete it. If you want to navigate through the profile, instead of using your web browser buttons, that forward and back, go ahead and use the buttons which you'll see right in that CSS Profile application. If you need to answer a question, once you start answering it, some help tips will appear to help you through the application. And you'll see questions with an asterisk. Those are required, but the CSS Profile and colleges and universities strongly recommend that you answer all questions to which you have answers, such as the social security number of the student. That's actually not a required field, but colleges and universities very much would like you to fill that in. It just helps them pair your CSS profile with the student's file at the school and with the student's FAFSA. So if you see a question that's not required, but you do have the answer, go ahead and type in that answer. And if you have a question that doesn't apply to you, you can leave an answer blank if it doesn't apply. Those of you who are on the FAFSA webinar know that for the FAFSA, you have to put a 0 for every question that doesn't apply. But for the profile, you can just skip those if they don't apply to you. So once you go into the profile, you'll start answering the questions. And one of the first questions will be parent information. You, as the family, will need to report all parents and step-parents up to 4, including any parents that have passed away, on the profile. So if the student has divorced parents and both of those parents are remarried, and that student therefore has 4 parents, 2 parents and 2 step-parents, all of those parents will be listed. So you'll see there will be a space for every parent. If a student has a legal guardian, that legal guardian should fill in his or her information as the parent on the profile. This is different than the FAFSA. If I'm a student and I'm in legal guardianship on the FAFSA, I actually qualify as an independent student and I don't report parent information at all. The profile is completely different. I do report parent information, and I actually report the information about my legal guardians in the parent fields. Similar to the FAFSA, if you're a student with divorced parents, you need to figure out your custodial parent, and that's the parent that you've lived with the most over the previous 12 months. You'll determine that parent on the FAFSA and the profile. So you'll determine who your custodial parent is. You as the student, the custodial parent, and the custodial parent's current spouse will all be on the profile. So if I'm a student with divorced parents and I live with my mom and my stepdad and I see my dad on the weekends, I'm on the profile and my mom and my stepdad are both on the profile, just like the FAFSA. And that'll be my main profile. That's where I'll put my student information. I'll list all the colleges where I'm applying. Now, this is what's different about the profile from the FAFSA. Some schools, not all, but some, and it is a good amount, require information from the non-custodial parent. And the college or university should let you know that on the school's website if a non-custodial parent profile is required. And remember, on that participating schools list, you can also see whether that profile is required by the non-custodial parent. And so if I'm a student and I have divorced parents, I'll fill out the profile with my custodial parent and that parent's current spouse, and then I'll supply the email address of my non-custodial parent, and the profile will actually email that parent and let that parent know that he or she needs to submit another profile, completely separate profile with non-custodial parent information. Though the profile will email the non-custodial parent, it's really the student's responsibility to make sure that non-custodial parent fills out that separate profile. So for the non-custodial parent, again, that parent will receive an email request to submit a totally separate profile. The parent will go into the same website, cssprofile.org. The parent will have to create his or her own College Board account. So can't go in under the student's account, will have to create their own College Board account. And again, they'll create a student account with parent information, parent name, etc. Every student will be given it's called a CB Fin Aid ID, and that will be included in the email that's sent to that non-custodial parent. So that parent will go to cssprofile.org, start a new profile, and then basically type in that student's CB Fin Aid ID, which will allow that parent profile of the non-custodial parent to match with the student's profile. When the non-custodial parent is filling out his or her profile, that person won't have to fill in student financial information because it's already been put on the main profile. That parent will just have to list student demographic info, so student name and birth date. The non-custodial parent does not choose the colleges where the student is applying, does see them listed, but can't add colleges. And that parent actually can't submit a CSS profile until there's at least one college that the student has listed that requires the CSS profile. You'll hear about fee payment codes in just a few minutes here on this webinar, but it's a way for someone to submit a profile without paying for it, and that is an option for non-custodial parents if they do have one of those fee payment codes. Just so parents know, the custodial parent and the non-custodial parent won't see each other's information. Remember, their information's on totally separate profiles. And there are students who just don't have contact with their non-custodial parent. That's reality. If that is the case, that student needs to contact every financial aid office that's requiring information from the non-custodial parent and explain the situation and basically ask for a waiver of that requirement of that non-custodial parent profile. Some schools have a form that students need to fill out. Some simply ask for a letter from the student. So find out the requirement from every financial aid office. So let's talk about the general information requested on this CSS profile. The profile is very similar to the FAFSA, so you're going to report a lot of the same information that you already reported on the FAFSA. You'll make a list of where the colleges where the student is applying, and you only have to list those colleges that require the profile. So if you have maybe some state schools that don't require the profile, you won't list those on the profile. You'll just list the schools that actually require the profile. Students and parents, you'll list 2017 income information, just like the FAFSA, though the profile will ask you to project what you think you're going to have in total for 2018 and 2019 income. This just gives financial aid offices an idea of if your income is going to drop or if it has dropped in 2018-19. They could follow up with you and get more information, and really that's going to help you in the long run. So it's just giving the financial aid office as much information as possible. Like the FAFSA, the profile will refer to the lines on your 2017 tax return. So they'll ask, for example, about your adjusted gross income. They'll tell you, look at this line, that's your adjusted gross income, type it right here into the profile. Many of you know that the FAFSA has a tool that allows you to log into the IRS and pull your tax return information directly into the FAFSA. That is not an option on the profile. So to complete the profile, you will have to have your 2017 tax return in front of you in order to answer those questions. The profile will also ask about parent and student assets. And just like the FAFSA, it's asking about the current value of those assets. As of the day you're filling out the profile, what's in your bank account, what's in your checking account, etc. The profile does ask about parent residence, where the parents live now. You will need to report that. As you know, the primary residence you don't report on the FAFSA, but you do for the profile. And then you'll need to report on the profile the household member information, like the FAFSA, how many people live in your household, and then how many children you have going to college next year in 2019, 2020. As I mentioned, the profile is going to ask just more questions and more detailed questions than the FAFSA. And again, this is going to give the financial aid offices just a better idea of how much you are able to pay for college based on your information. So for parent information, there are some questions that are not asked on the FAFSA, and that includes, what are your untaxed Social Security benefits? Did you receive an earned income credit? How much was it? Did you receive an additional child tax credit? And did you receive a foreign income exclusion? In the assets section, you will need to report some assets that you don't report on the FAFSA. And that includes, as I mentioned, the value and debt of the primary home where you live. You don't report that on the FAFSA. All business and farm information. On the FAFSA, you didn't have to report the value of any small businesses. On the profile, you do. You'll need to report, there's one question about parent assets held in siblings' names. And this simply means if the sibling of the student applicant has an asset that is actually a parent asset, you need to report that. So if you, as the parent, let's say you saved $50,000, and maybe so you didn't have to pay taxes on any interest income, you put that $50,000 in the name of one of your children, the sibling of the applicant. The profile wants to know about that asset. So it's not sibling assets if they've earned the money. If you have maybe a 15-year-old who mows lawns or babysits and has his own bank account, that's his asset. You don't need to report that. It's only if that sibling of the student applicant has an asset that is really your money. You do need to report that. And then you will be asked about the value of your retirement. Most schools are just eyeballing this. They're not actually using it in the financial aid formula to determine your eligibility or the amount of your financial aid, but they just really want to know what's in that retirement account. And this is more so for families that maybe have very low income, very low assets, but have a lot sitting in a retirement account. A school might follow up and ask about that. But again, a lot of schools aren't going to use that. And then the profile asks more questions about your expenses. Do you have high medical and dental expenses? Are you paying for private elementary or secondary school tuition for your younger children? Do you, as the parent, have education loan payments? Are you paying back student loans? All those questions about your expenses are going to help you in the financial aid process, because then the college or university will know that you don't have as much or as many resources to pay for college because you have these extra expenses. These are not asked about on the FAFSA. You can send a letter to a college and university financial aid office to let people know, but the profile just goes ahead and asks right up front. For family information, you're going to list everyone in your household, but the profile is going to ask actually how old everyone is. How old are all those siblings? And they will ask as well, what are the colleges that the siblings are attending? And that helps them understand how much you're actually contributing. If you have a child who's applying to college, so you're filling out the profile for that child, but let's say you have older children who are in college and they all go to schools that are pretty expensive, then the financial aid office will know that by listing those colleges the siblings attend. Students will need to list if they've won any private scholarships, not if they've applied for any, but if they've already received private scholarships that will go toward college costs. That just helps the financial aid office know to expect that money later on. As well, if the student has received any employee tuition benefits, either through an employer of the student or an employer of a parent, that's helpful to know as well, as the financial aid office can then expect those funds. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there is a section where you as a family will be able to explain any special circumstances. This does appear after certain questions, so it might say if you answered yes to the question above, please explain. And there's also a section at the end of the application. And this is where you can notate if you had a change in income from 2017 to 2018, if you had some exceptional expenses, home repairs, etc. You can list all that in there. If something happens after you submit the profile, let's say you hear about a job loss after you submit the profile, you can simply send those details right to the college or university. And then, as I mentioned, schools can add their supplemental questions. You'll see which school is asking those questions. Some of them aren't actually required, but it is strongly recommended that you answer them. It can just help schools with the financial aid calculation. So there are fees associated with the profile. The FAFSA is always free 100% of the time, but the profile does come with a cost. It's $25 to submit the application to one school, and then it's $16 to submit the application to each additional school. You do pay the fees. Fees are paid by you, the family, and you can pay with a credit or a debit card. If you're the non-custodial parent filling out the profile, you'll just have $25 one-time fee. So even if 4 different schools require the profile from the non-custodial parent, that non-custodial parent is only going to pay one $25 fee. There are fee waivers for certain populations, and these are automatically granted to students if the family meets one of the following. If the family is very low income, and that means that parent income is approximately $45,000 based on a family of 4. It's based on the poverty line. If the student is an orphan or a ward of the court and under the age of 24, that student automatically receives fee waivers. If the student received an SAT fee waiver and used the same student College Board account to log into the profile, that student will automatically receive fee waivers. And any students that reside in FEMA designated disaster areas, so any students recently affected by Hurricane Florence, for example, and they're in that designated area, they'll receive fee waivers automatically. These are not available to international students, so only domestic, and it's only for first-year undergraduates whose parents live in the U.S. So if you have to do the profile, some schools require you to submit the profile every year. Maybe you get a profile fee waiver for freshman year. You will have to pay that $25 for sophomore, junior, senior year when you submit the profile. But at least at that point, you're only submitting it to one school because you've already enrolled somewhere. You'll know early in the process if you are qualified for a fee waiver, and you can use it for an unlimited number of schools. So if you qualify based on one of those characteristics above, you can submit the profile for free to as many schools as you'd like. And then non-custodial parents, if they meet the same income guidelines as those stated above, they'll receive the fee waiver. And then I mentioned earlier, there's something called fee payment codes. And these are codes that are usually purchased by colleges or universities or college access organizations to use for students. Each code pays for one college submission, and there's no limit on how many you can use. So some students, for example, get help with college applications through a regional or neighborhood college access organization. That organization might purchase some fee payment codes for students so that students can submit the profile for free. So once you go through all of those questions, you'll be given the chance to review your application, and you will be given a prompt if something doesn't seem right. If there's an inconsistency or it looks like you may have typed in an incorrect number, the profile will prompt you to check your answers. You will be able to print all your answers if you'd like. And you will need to check a box to verify that everything looks accurate, and then you'll be asked to pay, and you'll see where there are fee waivers. Once you submit the profile to a certain number of schools, you can't make online edits to the information that was sent to those schools. If you add a school later on, then you can add additional information or edit your information. But once you submit the profile to a school or to a number of schools, you can't edit the information online that's been submitted, and you can't delete schools because you've already paid to submit that information to the school. So let's say you submit your profile and then you realize the next day that you made a big error. You listed a wrong asset amount or your income was incorrect. What you'll need to do is contact each college and university financial aid office. You have to contact each one separately, unfortunately, and you'll have to submit the correct information. Usually they'll require a letter or an email to explain what you've done incorrectly. Sometimes they will require supporting documentation. But again, you'll have to contact every school if you want to edit any of the information. There is a dashboard within the profile that students will see and that you'll see as well if you're helping to complete the profile. You can access it anytime. There's a tab on the top right of the application where you can see that you can go right into your dashboard. And it's going to include a lot of helpful information. First, your application status, let you know if you've submitted the profile. It's going to include every college that you've listed on the profile, the submission date, so when you sent the profile to that school, the deadline for that school's financial aid process, and then any additional documents that are required. If there are next steps required by any school, you'll see your payment receipt if you did have to pay. There's an option in there to save or print your application if you want to go in later and print your answers. And that's where in the dashboard you can add a college. So let's say you submit your profile to 5 schools and then your son or daughter adds a school to the college list and that school requires the profile. You can go right into the dashboard, add that school, pay your additional $16, and then submit. There's also a link here to iDoc, and I'll talk about iDoc again. That's that main tax scanning service. Also on the dashboard, there's a space to add the non-custodial parent's email address. And you can resend that email as well. So if the student sent the email to the non-custodial parent and then wants that parent to receive a reminder email, that's where you can resend that email. And then here on the dashboard as well is where the student will find that CB FinAid ID. That's just the ID number associated with that student's profile. So iDoc, I've mentioned a few times. It's the College Board's institutional documentation service, and it simply collects family documents such as tax returns on behalf of a college or university. So let's say a college or university requires the profile, requires the FAFSA, but really wants to see your tax return and maybe wants to see some additional information as well. That family can use iDoc, and it makes it easier on the college or university to collect information. So a college requires a tax return, for example, they'll use this iDoc service, and through this service, your family can submit, as an example, those required tax returns, and it's a scanning service, so you can do it completely online instead of mailing something in. Each student will have an iDoc dashboard. That's in addition to the profile dashboard. If students are required to use iDoc, they'll have their own iDoc dashboard. So it'll be a dashboard on the iDoc site, and it'll tell students of required documents for every school. If there's an institution-specific form, so maybe a college has their own form. Maybe they want to know more about everyone in the household, all the members of the family. They might create their own form. They can load it into iDoc. The student will see it as a requirement and under that Get Forms link on the iDoc dashboard, and then they can download it, fill it out, and then send it in. Documents submitted through iDoc have to be either in JPEG, TIFF, or PDF format. And you do want to make sure that you sign documents. So if a tax return is required, you might not have signed your tax return because maybe you did it online and then submitted it online. You do need to sign your tax return before you submit it. iDoc does have a customer service number. You can see that on your screen, and its own website associated with the College Board. So again, this is just a service that's collecting additional documents from your family, and you can submit them through online. You can actually take a picture of the document as well. That makes it easy if it's required, and submit it online through that iDoc dashboard. You'll get full instructions once you do the profile if iDoc is used by any of the schools and what you have to submit. There's also an iDoc overview right on the College Board site. So if you're required to use it and you're a little unsure about it, you can go through. This is essentially a short webinar that explains iDoc, tells you exactly how to submit your forms through the site. And you can see the URL for this iDoc overview right at the bottom of your screen. Profile does have a customer support center, so you can click on the Contact Us button throughout the application and you'll get to this page. There are some FAQs. If you click on the FAQs tab, the Contact Us, you'll get a phone number that you can call, and there's also chat available. So if you have a quick question and chat is available, you can type that in or you could simply call. This is that CSS Profile overview. A link to this overview is right on the CSS Profile homepage. Again, this overview is pretty much going to cover a lot of the same information that was in this webinar today. But if you want to cover all your bases, see what they have to say, you can go ahead and listen to this overview. It's pretty quick. And this is the student guide that I mentioned, and the link to that student guide is right on the home page. Again, you can see some of the questions here. It's basic info, and I went through a lot of it today on the webinar, but giving you an introduction to the profile, how you complete it, and how you submit it. And finally, what you can do now, if you're not signed up for MEFA emails, you can go ahead and do that on our homepage. This is the time to research your deadlines and your required financial aid applications. Remember, you're going to submit the profile to only the schools that require it, and you'll submit the FAFSA to every college and university where your son or daughter is applying. We have seminars throughout the community over the next couple of months on college financing. So if you want an overview on the financial aid process, definitely find us in your community. And we also have webinars as well. We have a few that are already recorded and then more coming up. So you can go to our events page. You'll see on the right-hand sidebar is where the recorded webinars are listed, and then the live ones, you'll see that listing as well. And then finally, you can start completing your applications. As you saw, the profile is already available. So you can go ahead and start that one if you'd like. Sometimes it's easier to do the FAFSA first, but really the order doesn't matter. Just remember to do both for the schools that require both. And do make sure to do them as soon as you can. They both officially become available October 1st, although we know the profile is available now. So I would do them in the first couple of weeks after October 1st if you can. Even if your deadline is later on in the fall or in the winter, just go ahead and get them out of the way. Some schools do award financial aid as funds become available, and they do run out of funds. So go ahead and submit your financial aid application sooner rather than later. And that's our webinar today. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead and if you have any questions, type them into your question section in the GoToWebinar panel on your screen. I'll go through them. If you have to jump off today, remember our website is mefa.org. Our email address is info@mefa.org. And then we have that 800 number on the screen, 800-449-MEFA, 6332. And we're all over social media. You can ask questions on social media as well, but would invite you to like us and follow us as we're posting information. Last thing I want to mention about social media is you don't actually have to be on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn to see what we're posting. You can simply go to mefa.org, our website, and then scroll down and click on any of those icons at the bottom of the page. So click on the FAFSA icon or Twitter, and that page, that Facebook page, that Twitter page for MEFA will come right up. You don't have to have any login. So you'll see what we're posting. We do post scholarships at least once a week on Facebook and Twitter that aren't located on our website or anywhere else. So for no other reason, just to find scholarships, it's a good idea just to check in with us on social media about once a week. So go ahead and type in information and I'll go through these questions. First question is about trusts and if we report them as an asset. You do report trusts on both the FAFSA and the profile actually. So if you have a trust, you'll need to report that. There's a fee waiver question about for someone who is a single parent and the custodial parent, and if the income that's taken into consideration is just the custodial parent's income for fee waivers or as well the non-custodial parent. It's just the custodial parent. So if you're a single custodial parent and you're low income, you will qualify for that fee waiver no matter what your non-custodial parent is earning. One question, if you're applying to one school early decision, do you just list that school on the profile and then add your other schools later? You can certainly do that. Yep. If you don't want to pay for all the schools at once, you could simply, because you're only with early decision, you're just applying to one school right now, you could go ahead and submit your early decision application, do your profile with just that school, and then let's say the student doesn't get into that early decision school and he or she applies to other schools' regular decision. Yep, you can go right into that dashboard and add the other schools and pay for those school submissions after that. Next question, is financial aid based primarily on custodial parents' income? With schools that require the CSS profile and that require non-custodial parent information, those schools most of them use custodial parent and non-custodial parent income equally. So they basically just add it together and assume as a family what you can contribute. They do calculate what they think the non-custodial parent can contribute, what they think the custodial parent can contribute, but they don't lay that out for the family. Instead, they, behind the scenes, figure out together what both parents can contribute. And then they take the cost of attendance at the school, they subtract those contributions, and then the resulting difference is what they are eligible to give your family in financial aid. But once it comes time to pay the bill, you won't see that the school expected maybe you to pay $3,000 and the non-custodial parent to pay $10,000. You won't see that. You'll just see the college bill and the financial aid received, and then it's really up to your family to figure out who's paying what. Looks like those are all the questions. I'll give you a few more seconds if there are any additional questions. And again, I'm going to send this recording out to all of you along with a copy of the slides later on today. So you'll receive these slides, you'll receive this recording. And then again, if you have more questions, please feel free to email or call us anytime. One more question. If we financially support a grandparent, but they're not a legal dependent, can that be noted? So yes, for the FAFSA, you notate people. If you're financially supporting someone and they live in your household, you report that person on the FAFSA. And if you are financially supporting someone and they don't live in your household, but you are financially supporting them, you can let financial aid offices let financial aid offices know by sending them a note. So profile or FAFSA, you could send a note to the college. Profile, you could basically in your special circumstances say that we're financially supporting these grandparents, even if they don't live with you, just so colleges and universities know. And they can take that into consideration. So that is something, it's just really based on the school's decision if they do so. There's one question about the early decision 1, early decision 2 application deadlines and how quickly the profile is sent to a school. So when you submit a profile and you list a school on that profile, that school is going to receive the profile, I think it's 2 or 3 days later. So even if you haven't submitted your application for admission yet, or you haven't really indicated to that school that the student is applying, that school still gets your information. So as soon as you, regardless of the deadline the school has set, if you do a profile and you submit it to a school, the school will get that profile a few days later. If they haven't gotten your application for admission yet, that's okay. They'll just hold on to the profile, but they'll see the date you submitted it. So yeah, if you know you're applying to a school, go ahead and submit the profile to that school anytime. And if you haven't submitted your admissions application yet, that's okay. Next question, if there's a significant private loan that a family has to pay off, can that be listed? Certainly. I would list anything you think the financial aid office should know, even if there's not a specific question about it. They will ask about certain debts, but if you have a private loan through a bank and there's no place to really report that on a specific line, a specific question that asks about it, go ahead and put it in the special circumstances. And you can explain, if you had a significant home repair and you had to take a loan to pay off that home repair, that's something that you can definitely notate in the special circumstances and that colleges and universities can take into account. So overshare rather than hold back information. Colleges and universities are going to read all the information you submit, and better just to submit something that you think they might consider rather than leave it off. And follow-up question, if the loan isn't documented because it's to a family member, you can still notate that if there is some type of written understanding, or if you could even write one up. Let's say you loaned, as a parent, you loaned money to your sister, the student's aunt, and you just agreed this is a massive loan, but we'll agree to pay it off, and there's nothing written. You could go ahead and write up a contract that your sibling, the student's aunt, could sign and submit that as documentation. It is helpful to have documentation, even if it's something that you're going to create just between the two of you. That's helpful for a financial aid office. It's easier for them to do something in the financial aid application in the process if they have documentation to back it up. And it doesn't have to be a formal contract. It doesn't have to be notarized. You could have it notarized, but even something that the two of you write up that you do in Microsoft Office or Excel and print out and send in, that's totally fine as well. Okay, it looks like we've gotten everything here. Again, contact us with any questions throughout this process. And thanks for joining today. Have a good day.